Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. We appreciate you being here with us. You're watching Take 5 with Steven Travers, where Steven brings on a guest, a friend, an acquaintance from the past who obviously has some historical athletic value. And we are certainly honored to have Rod McNeill with us today, former USC Trojan. He's a national champion. He was a draft pick with the New Orleans Saints. He played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a great football career. He's originally from North Carolina, but moved to California when he was about 13 years old. And his football career certainly took a turn for the best. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that. But Steven, first and foremost, Rod has a tremendous part of USC history and collegiate football history, not only as a national champion, but as a member of the team when you wrote the book One Night Two Cities, and all the other amazing things that are a part of not only his career but NCAA folklore.
Yeah, thank you, Harper. I got to know Rod back around 2000, probably around 2005, and I interviewed him for two different books that I wrote, which were both successful books. One Night, Two Teams, Alabama versus USC, and the game that changed the nation. Rod was a sophomore with the Trojans when they went back to Birmingham in 1970, so he had a lot of recollections about that. Then we returned to the subject of his USC career in a 2009 book called What It Means to Be a Trojan. And so I've interviewed him several times, and he's an absolute gentleman and a great Trojan and part of their most glorious past. So I want to thank Rod McNeill for being a guest on Take 5 with Steven Travers.
Well, Rod, welcome to the show. We appreciate it. Why don't we go back to some of the early days that you have when you were playing? You grew up in North Carolina. Was there a Pop Warner team that you played football on that you go, man, I really like this. This is good. Or was there a baseball team that you were on that you go, I really love athletics and sports has become an integral part of my life? What was that like for you?
Well, North Carolina it has some very fond memories of that state and the city of Durham, which is where Duke University is, and North Carolina Central College, which is where I lived quite a few years, right across the street from that college. And I had two older brothers who played football. One played at Virginia State, and the other just played local here at Mount Sac, which is a junior college here in California. So they influenced me as far as having an interest in sports. But you got to remember, North Carolina is a basketball state. In fact, at the college I just mentioned, Earl the Pearl Monroe played basketball there. So all the guys in my neighborhood all wanted to be Earl the Pearl Monroe #2. So we did a lot of basketball, but that was excellent work to get you prepared for football, of course. So I don't know if you guys remember, but I had my brother Fred, who was a year younger than I was, and so he wound up pushing me and wound up pushing each other athletically, which was a real blessing. And I had 7 brothers and sisters, including in addition to Fred. So we had a very cozy environment there in North Carolina because we only had a 2-bedroom house. Funny though, we lived right next door to the president of the university. So we had our little 2-bedroom house, and they were always inviting us over, the kids over after they had college functions to, just hang out after the end of their wiener roast or party, whatever they had going. That those are big things in North Carolina, was a wiener roast where everybody would get together. They'd have hot dogs they make, and watermelon and lemonade, that whole thing. So we wouldn't have experienced that if it hadn't been for the kindness and generosity of the president of the university and his wife. So that got me interested in college, because also my sisters were all very well educated. My older sister was summa cum laude at North Carolina Central, and my other sisters all had master's degrees. So going to college was an automatic thing for me. And when I moved out here at 13 to California, it was interesting because my uncle, who was my mom's brother, was an attorney in LA, and he picked the house for us. So we moved from a neighborhood where we had no interaction with non-black people. Everybody in my neighborhood was black, and that's for like miles around. Only time we would ever see anyone who was not black was when we would go downtown with my mom to shop or whatever, that kind. But then we moved out here to a place called Baldwin Park, which is about 25 miles east of LA. And our neighborhood was completely the opposite. We had, I'd say 90% of the neighbors were white, and then there was another, 10% that were Hispanic. But there were no black people in the town at all, except for our family. Oddly enough, just let me know if I'm rambling. Oddly enough, our neighborhood transitioned very quickly. As we moved into the neighborhood, we were the only black family. Then a couple of months later, 2 or 3 other families moved in right around us. And actually that forged some really strong friendships. Very good friends with everybody that I lived with back in those days in 1964 to today. So it was, the existence there was wonderful, frankly. Even though there were some people who were kind of miffed by our being there in town and thought we'd been hired by the NAACP to kind of perform some of that, the stuff they want to say people get paid to do. In actuality, we did that because that's the only place we could live at that point. It was a place that was economical enough, and they welcomed my mom and dad, and they were all very, very, very much able to prosper in that town. In fact, my dad went on to be being a guy who came from North Carolina, where he worked several jobs to keep his family going, including being a policeman, a store owner, a boxer, a pool shark, and whatever he could do to make money for our family. So when we moved to California, he became fairly prosperous very quickly. He always had an outgoing personality, but in North Carolina, he was stifled. So again, he came out when we were playing sports. He took over the Booster Club at Baldwin Park High School, basically became the president there, went on to be president of the Lions Club, ran for city council, became a city councilman, mayor pro tem, also the mayor of California, or president of California City. So he wound up getting to the point where when he passed away, they had they stopped all the traffic on the freeway. So that, we were talking about the 10 freeway, which is one of the most busy freeways in the country. That amazed me, and it just showed me what an incredible accomplishment that he had going for him. My mom, on the other hand, she was able to also become more gainfully employed. She was a very intelligent young lady. She was in college at the age of 16. Her parents were both doctors, and they were, of course, pretty disgruntled when my dad took her away from home and wound up marrying her at 16. And they had started having kids. When she came out here, she got a job at General Hospital. She also ran and got involved in politics and local organizations. And she wound up having her name on a building here in the town of Baldwin Park, existing, the Julian McNeill Senior Center. So they had a huge impact on the community, as well as a enormous impact on us as kids, because we were all still in a small compact house. At that point, there was probably 7 of us all together, and with 3-bedroom house. But it was such an upgrade from where we had lived in North Carolina that it was truly an idyllic situation. We had friends, and all of the friends, we were all kind of part of that change that was taking place. The Summer of Love, I think they called it, in '69. When we went to the outer space, landed on the moon, and there was a peace and love, and everybody was really kind of relishing some of the changes that were taking place. and we were actually participating in it. In fact, I like to tell my friends, like, you know what, guys, we're history, because we can sit down and talk. Well, a lot of the things that make up the history of the United States, even the world at that point, we experienced it from an actual participatory point of view, and that was really special.
No
Am I
kidding.
talking too much?
No, you're giving us some deep insight. You had no choice, Rod, to be anything other than a great success, right? With your parents, your upbringing, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. I probably could have been more of a success if I had more singleness of mind, but I kind of got involved in several different things, and that probably slowed down my progress. I know you guys remember my brother Fred. I mentioned him before. He played at UCLA and was an All-American there, also Hall of Fame at UCLA. Uh, he went on to be an attorney. I went to law school for a year and a half. We got sidetracked, but yeah, Fred went on to be an attorney and practiced law until he passed away from CTE related issues. So, but yeah, everybody in my family was well educated and did very well as far as promoting in the community, being involved, and really continuing to try and promote a positive environment for kids to grow up in. And I'm very, very thankful for that.
When was your childhood memory of knowing that you could play well enough that you could get to whatever the next level would be? If you were playing Pop Warner, you said you moved to California when you were 13. You weren't quite yet in high school, but you were on your way. And was there a coach or a particular individual that really helped you to be able to start in high school and eventually get into college?
Well, I can tell you that whole story. In North Carolina, there was no such thing as Pop Warner. They were like neighborhood organizations would try to have teams that were put together, but I never played a down of football on a team until I got to California. In fact, we had a game we would play called Keep Away, and basically one person would take the ball and then he would just run around. We had a huge playground, and he'd just run around until somebody tackled him. So I realized I was very successful at that game because I would get the ball and I'd wind up having to give it back because nobody could ever catch me. So that's another thing I got emphasis on again here in California. I went around to play with the neighborhood kids, and we played tackle football, even though we have any uniforms. And I was like unstoppable in the tackle football game. At this point, I grew pretty fast. So I was like probably 6'1" in junior high school, and weighed about 150 pounds. But I was very fast. He was at a really good speed. And quickly I could see, and I didn't really understand football, but I could see that I could play that game if I was able to figure out the mentality that it takes. It takes, you guys played, it takes a certain mentality to play football. It's not like playing basketball where you can, you don't necessarily want to, be physical with anybody. But it was, I had to figure out that, hey, at some point you got to hit somebody. So, and that happened to me my freshman year at Baldwin Park High School. As far as Pop Warner, they did have Pop Warner in those days. My brother was able to play. When I came out here, I was too big. I weighed too much. So they said, well, you qualify for Pop Warner. But my brother did, and he wound up, I watched him play probably I'd say the summer of my freshman year in high school. I said, wow, look at him. He's doing really well out there. I might be able to do as well as he's doing. And so we wound up playing high school football at Baldwin Park. Probably did the best that school had ever done as far as competing in California interscholastic football, because our town was pretty much always known for the fights because of a lot of gang activity. But after that, we became known for athletics and competing, and really a very positive tone in the city itself.
Did you get to play a whole lot when you were a freshman and a sophomore? You said you were 6 feet, 150. You hadn't really grown into your body yet. You had lengthened, but you needed to fill out a little bit, and obviously you did. Was that an interesting time for you?
Well, yeah, it was, because I did, like you said, I started to put on weight pretty quickly. My freshman year, I was 155, and probably by the end of that my freshman year going into my sophomore year, I was already over 180. So, but I was running track, so I did 3 sports: football, basketball, and track, and ran hurdles. I did pretty well in all those sports. So, yeah, when I was playing, I really noticed I was faster than most people should be at that size, and I was able to emphasize some of the things I watched. Watched football a lot with my dad because he's a great football fan, and I love the Chicago Bears. So Gale Sayers was my favorite player, so I always tried to emulate him as a player, and had some very good success. I wound up starting as a sophomore. Freshman couldn't play varsity. Sophomore, I was a starting running back. I made Rookie of the Year that first year. Then from then on, I continued having good success. And then my senior year, I set a CIF record, single game record for rushing, like 375 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then from then on, I was, just everybody was talking to me about where I would go to school. I was highly recruited by UCLA, Stanford, Notre Dame, USC, of course. And USC had always had the edge because I spent some time with Mike Garrett. Actually, became friends with OJ. OJ had a wife who was very much the same age as my brother Bob, who was an attorney. His wife and Marguerite, who's OJ's first wife, became really good friends, and so I get to see OJ quite a bit, and that's why I don't want to get into that whole thing, but it was really startling to me to see what happened to him, because I think it was something that's hard to believe. It's unbelievable, especially when you see how he interacted with people on a regular basis. He was just always super respectful, and everybody loved him because he knew who they were. I mean, he would come around practice, and OJ would be there. He would know the name of everybody who was there, which I thought was a remarkable capability. I tried to see if I could develop that, but I wasn't ever that good. But that was the thing that really got us going. And in fact, I came very close to going to Stanford. Nick Vermeil became one of the coaches there, and I like the university. It's beautiful, and I decided against it because, again, a relationship with Mike and OJ. Just seeing how they were matriculating through USC. OJ was really almost done, but I spent the day with Mike, and we just did the LA thing. We had lunch on campus. He had to go down to a movie studio, and TV studio. We was doing a program, and we came back and had dinner. And went and played basketball on campus, and it's like one day we spent the whole, 12 hours just doing incredibly fantastic and exciting things. I said, wow, this is what it's like to be a Trojan. Of course, he was very successful. Didn't ever spend that much time with OJ, but I did get to go up to his house. I met Marguerite at one point, but yeah, he was always just a complete gentleman to me and all of my friends. So one thing about that whole thing, I just want to talk about too, because we were part of a unique situation, because at my year as a freshman, we bought in. The school bought in some incredible athletes, including Charlie Young, who was All-American, Lynn Swann, who was an All-American, Sam Cunningham was All-American, and these are my best friends, and they were just incredible. I mean, great athletes, great people, super great attitudes. And, I was one of those guys that were part of that group. And we knew, SC had like 25 scholarships where, somewhere like UCLA might have 50. But we knew that we were going to have an impact on the football scene. And we truly did. The 72 team, all those guys on us team together. So it was awesome. Am I on track?
Well, Rod, you mentioned OJ, and I don't know if you know this, but OJ went to City College of San Francisco, and my
Right.
dad was a professor at City College of San Francisco and got to know OJ. And there was a point there where OJ needed to get an AA degree in order to be able to transfer to USC because he'd had problems with his academics in high school. So he had to get this AA, and Arizona State was willing to waive it. And he was like, God, I really want to go play college ball. But my dad was among a group of sort of, shall we call them wise men, and Marv Goo was included in this, who talked him out of doing that and said, look, if your real desire is to be a Trojan, you're going to have to play that one more year and it'll be worth it to you. So that's how I became a Trojan football fan, because we're listening to this football game and the announcer's going, Southern California ball, handoff to Simpson, 8 yards up the middle. And I'm saying to my dad, who are we listening to, Dad? Is this Cal? He goes, no, son, this is Southern Cal. And I'm like, oh, well, why are we listening to them? He goes, well, there's a young fellow named Simpson who I taught at City College. And so, Simpson, the ball carrier, touchdown Simpson, Trojans win 37-2. The Rose Bowl with O.J. Simpson, national champions within no time, I'm an absolute avid Trojan fan. And then when when I found out that Tom Seaver had gone to USC, that was it. It was Katie barred the door. There was nobody else. But I just want to say that because I know all those men that you mentioned earlier, and some are not with us. Unfortunately, the fabulous Sam Bam Cunningham has passed this mortal coil, but I'm good friends with Charlie Young and a number of those other people. And Harper, Rod here is a humble man of God. I know that. And he is not going to brag. But I'm going to say this because I've talked to his teammates. And they'll tell you that you can mention OJ, you can mention Mike Garrett, you can mention Clarence Davis. He was a running back at that level, as good as any of them. Now, he had injuries, and so his career didn't necessarily pan out as great as some of those names that I just mentioned. But this man's talent, his ability, coming out of high school and in 3 years at the University of Southern California was absolutely outstanding. But I want to ask you about this. Could you get into USC? We get to your sophomore year, and a momentous event occurs. And I don't know that people knew that it was momentous at the time, but in later years, it's been talked about. The team goes to Birmingham. They go to Legion Field. They play a segregated Alabama Crimson Tide team. And there had to be a lot of emotions going through all of your minds. Jimmy Jones, the quarterback, Toady, help me with this. Their linebacker, Bubba Smith's, Toady Smith, was it?
Toady Smith, yeah.
Okay, and there were a lot of emotions. What was going through everybody's mind? What was going through your mind going to Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama, September 1970?
Well, I think for me, I was a sophomore. I had bruised my knee, so I wasn't expecting to play, but I was able to play, but I didn't get in the game. But the whole attitude for me was a little bit different because I was raised in the South. I was used to not interacting much with non-black people. So my expectation was that since we were SC, we were not going to be harassed, but some guys were actually afraid. And, I heard on a second hand that a couple guys even had weapons that they bought for protection. They thought just unsure about it. And even one of those might have been the person you were talking about, Cody Smith. Yeah, I don't want to malign him in any way, but he, some people said he had something in his briefcase that could have been used to protect himself. And he came from Texas, and his experience is probably different than mine, because I know that people are much more close proximity in Texas than they are in North Carolina. We just didn't interact that much. But I do remember my sisters and brothers going down and demonstrating, being arrested for demonstrating and doing and showing their concern about the ability to have lunch at a particular place. So, but I think the thing that was just startling was just seeing how it all happened. I mean, Alabama was extremely excited, the whole city, the state. And the first time in my whole life I saw, police escorts everywhere we went, and people out in the street waving and just looking and watching us. And even the articles that when the paper was putting out about the game, talking about the kind of players that we had and versus the kind of players that Alabama had. And then, of course, to see what happened in the game is like Katie barred the door. And I think one of the key things, too, is not mentioned a lot, is that Clarence Davis could walk to Alabama from his house.
Yeah.
But she didn't get recruited by them. But so he had reason to have an incredible game, and he had a very big game. So he's a more diminutive size, great player, but he was not as big as somebody like Sam. Sam was a physical specimen every way you look at it. And I'd seen Sam, and we got to be friends when we were competing in track. He never did sports events I did. But I would watch him do his shot put, he was state champion. And he was, 220 state champion. He's just super strong, very fast. And we just competed at track and other things when we got to college. But just to see him he was basically unstoppable against Alabama. So it was really destiny, I think. It was destiny, and they used SC. And I always tell Sam, Sam, you're destined to do what you did. And I said, another thing you're destined for was to have 4 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. He had gotten 2 of those touchdowns at the end of the game. And I got a chance to play some of that game. And I wound up having some really good runs that stopped at the 1 or 2 yard line. And he got to do his magical dive into the end zone twice, right?
Yeah.
Said, you owe me 2 of those touchdowns. He didn't. Okay.
There's a question.
Not you, Sam, but you were destined to.
Yes.
And the guy is incredible anyway. And you know him, Steve. It's probably the most. And I did actually spoke at his funeral. And I told him how Sam was kind of guy who he loved people. And when I would go with him sometimes to Santa Barbara, you could see how all the people there just loved him and treated him like a king. And he treated them like kings and queens. And I told him that Sam kind of embarrassed me by the way he loved people. He just really loved people. And I'm thinking, I can't see myself treating people that well. But that was just his unique capability. And, I love him, miss him. And everybody who knew him feels the same way.
100%. Well, you and me both. But I want to ask you, you guys get off the plane and you're driving with a police escort on a bus to the hotel, and you pass through some neighborhoods with shotgun houses and poor neighborhoods. And I've had, like John Papadakis once was talking about that, and he was talking about the ghetto in Alabama, and he compared it to Los Angeles. He said the one big difference was that in Los Angeles, those neighborhoods had been basically white neighborhoods, and that had been pretty well kept up, and they were all single-family homes, even in places like Compton and South Central Los Angeles. But in Alabama, it wasn't like that. It was generational poverty. And so a lot of your teammates have talked about that bus ride. What can you remember about what you saw with your own eyes as you're driving along towards the game? And it's had to be an eye opener for you. How did it make you feel about maybe your responsibilities, or maybe I'm going too far? What say you?
Well, Stephen, I have to keep going back to my experience in North Carolina because, what I saw, it didn't look any different than the neighborhoods I grew up in when I was a kid. And, just part of the disparity that was existing in black neighborhoods versus white, more affluent neighborhoods. And, one of the odd things when I was a kid, my dad would get little jobs for us to do where we could go into the white neighborhoods. Like we used to deliver phone books. And I remember we would go into their neighborhoods and deliver these phone books. And I'd see houses, essentially mansions. And they were all around the area we lived. There was mansions. But, I don't know, but it didn't have an impact on me in that was something that I couldn't have. It was just something that we didn't have at that point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. My mom had always made us feel like we were as good or as wealthy as anybody, even though I had one funny experience where one of the kids came home with me after school, and he came inside, and I turned on the light in our living room, and he started laughing. So what are you laughing at? He said, "You have those old-fashioned push-button on and off switch." To me, I thought that was cool, but he was just cracking up because he said, "I thought you guys were rich." That's something that a lot of people have said to me before, too, because we moved to Baldwin Park. And there's a community called Baldwin Hills in a very affluent area up on top of, in this midtown LA. A lot of affluent black families live. In fact, my aunts and uncles lived up there. But our family I always thought we were well-to-do. You know what I mean? Even though I would have a lot of money and sometimes we didn't have new shoes, I just never could relate. I just felt so good about our family and so good about my parents and so good about the situation. And they just prepared us to think of ourselves as able and capable and as good as anybody that lived on the planet.
Now, weren't you part of a group that called themselves, I think they called themselves the Big Three, or maybe it was the Big Four, and then Lynn Swan was younger and he kind of edged his way into it, and a lot of you guys gave him a little bit of a hard time. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I gotta be very careful on that one. I don't Actually, the group name was the Big Five.
Big Five, okay.
And we would have been the Big Six if we could have got a car. But the car, I was usually driving one of my brother's cars. And, the cars in those days, they had 2 seats in the front and 3 in the back. You couldn't get a third guy in the middle because we didn't have the bench seat. Everybody was going with the bucket seat. So I was the one who always got the car. And we couldn't put anybody else in there. So it was me, Sam, Charlie Young, Manfred Moore, and Edessel Garrison.
Yeah.
So you know Edessel, right?
Yeah.
That passed away.
Sure.
And that's incredible talent, speed, great hands. He could have been an All-American easily. But that was not because he didn't like Len, although he was a bit annoying. He was younger than we were, for one thing. And he was always trying to insert himself in our group. So we never let him do it, though. He was just a younger guy. We had to treat him like he was subservient because he was always talking trash. I really think Len held on to a little bit of that because we would get together afterwards, and our friendship, I think, was better and stronger before he struck it rich in the Steelers. So then he was able to say, "Hey, I'm my own Big Five. I don't need you guys." Yeah. But it was pretty funny. There's some stuff that happened that we did to him that I can't mention. It was not cool.
Okay.
But had to do with an elevator.
I think pretty much everybody
that wasn't my idea, by the way, Steve. So if anybody says it was me, you tell them Rod said.
I think pretty much everybody who's ever played on a sports team and has been in a clubhouse, locker room, team hotel has had stories about his teammates pulling pranks on him, shortening the bed, locking a guy out of the locker room when he's only wearing his jock strap. That's just the life of an athlete, and it's very common. So I could see where you're coming from because he was at least 1 year younger than all of you guys. But that was a very special group. And really, if you look at it, several of those players became pastors. And it really was just a tight-knit, very intelligent group of young college football players all come together under the auspices of this guy that Sam Bam Cunningham was once asked on the field at Legion Field. He goes, "Are you afraid of the going up against the mighty Crimson Tide?" And Sam replied, "There's only one thing I'm afraid of, and that's that little white-haired man over there." And he pointed at John McKay. So why don't you tell us about John McKay, a coach, a man, a psychologist? What does Rod McNeill have to say?
Yeah. I mean, he had about him that you couldn't fawn over him, but you kind of wanted to because he was like we watched TV in those days. They had the Rat Pack with Bob Hope and Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, and they all would do these movies, and they were always so funny. I watched a lot of those movies when I was a kid, and to me, John McKay could have walked right into that group and fit in there perfectly. In fact, somebody told a story. You probably heard it, where John McKay was at a restaurant, and Frank Sinatra happened to be there. And I think John was talking to Bear Bryant, and Frank said, "Come over, John. Back over. To come over and join us." So they were like, just sending a message like, "Hey, we're the ones. You come over and join us, Frank." But he would always have this incredible ability to drop these one-liners. I mean, he was really amazing the way he could do that. I mean, some of his comments, like, I think we got destroyed by somebody. Like, Notre Dame. I think the score was like 50-0. And he says, gentlemen, don't be so concerned about that. There's like a billion Chinese who don't ever give this a second thought. And he also said, okay, so coach, after we played a bad game, how do you feel about your team's execution? And he said, I'm totally in favor of it. You know, he just rolled off the sleeve. He has an incredible, funny way of talking. But on the other hand, if he was angry, he was not going to hold back. And that's not hold back against us, the players, or the coaches. He can be, he can let go of some vehemence when they called for it. And he knew how to get us motivated. But he was not like a great speech giver. You know, he was not that kind of guy who's going to try to talk you into getting excited. But he had the right combination of attitude, confidence, and really just affection for the team, and that helped us and made us all feel very good together. And just speaking about that, we did have, from the time that I was there to the time I left, we did have a period where the team was kind of fragmented. And I think that had something to do with, one, we had a competition going on between Jimmy Jones, who was probably one of the best college quarterbacks you'd ever see, and Mike Ray, who was also a great quarterback, who came in after Jimmy. And as the team struggled some, that issue of who should play, Jimmy or Mike, kind of increased that chasm that was kind of existing on that team. And that's where some of the guys that you've been alluding to, Dave Brown and some of the other Christian players on the team, kind of got together. And an amazing story, I just really kind of heard about it, that they went to Coach McKay and asked if he would allow them to pray before the games and afterwards. And Coach McKay surprisingly said, that's fine. And that is what I think had a significant impact on that team, because we had a lot of talent, but we really only finished 6-4-1. And it was some of that fragmentation that was going on, and like we couldn't actually get the job done and play because we weren't playing for each other. You know what I mean? There was no camaraderie. There was separatism.
Well, we've talked about this issue. We've talked about this issue on this show in the past. We've had Charles Young on, and we're going to have Dave Brown on at some point. And Dave was not your star guy, but he realized it. I've talked to him at length about this. He realized something's going on, and we're not together. And there are racial differences. This is 1971. This is in the middle of civil rights era. A lot of things are happening in America. A lot of change. And he goes up to Coach McKay and he says, Coach McKay was an old school Irish Catholic, and Dave Brown was more evangelical Christian. And it wasn't necessarily something that he thought McKay was going to want to do. But as you mentioned, McKay basically said, we're 2-4. I mean, we need something. And that team prayed, and that week went to Notre Dame, beat them handily at South Bend, did not lose again in 1971, did not lose in 1972, and didn't lose till the midway through the 1973 season, by which time you were gone. But in 1972, Rod, this is a team that many people still believe is the greatest of all time. You were the starting tailback on a team. You also had Sam Bam Cunningham. A lot of people had to get their touches. Charlie Young needed his touches. Lynn Swann needed his touches. By this time, you've got Mike Ray. He's a bit more of a passing quarterback. You're getting some touches. Sam's getting some touches, but you've got a guy named Anthony Davis who's playing behind you, and you get some injuries. and AD comes along in his 9th game. But talk about your part of that season before before AD comes along. Your performance on the 72 team. You guys opened with a victory at Arkansas. You never trail again the entire season. How good was that team? How good was the blocking, the schemes? Is it really the greatest college football team of all time?
Well, there's only one way I can answer that. That would be factual, and that's absolutely yes, we were. But I have to say, too, you mentioned Dave Brown and not having a star quality, but, to all of us, he definitely had star quality. He was a guy who was at the center. He was the center of the team. And, I always remember him being the starting center. There may have been somebody else who played before him. But Dave was, I was kind of saw those guys in passing one day because I was moving pretty fast when I was had a lot to do, a lot of people to see, that kind of thing. I wasn't really focused the way I should have been. But I remember walking past them, a bunch of guys in a room. I think it was like in the dorms, the 2 days, and they were having, praying as a group. And I remember looking at that and just being amazed by it and thinking that's a positive thing, that's a good thing for the team, but I didn't stay to partake. I never really did. As I look back on it, that significantly changed the team without visit or being forceful. When all the guys matriculated together, and suddenly we congealed or realized we were playing for each other. The attitude of animosity just disappeared, and I still feel that today when we get together. And I know, Dave, you've heard that there's probably 20 of us from time to time who still have a Bible study every week. In fact, we'll take tomorrow next Wednesday off for Thanksgiving, but we meet every Wednesday, and different people lead the Bible study. Dave, or I will, or Mike Ryan. I actually went talking about my hats. I went to seminary for a year and a half as well, because I was thinking I was going to be a minister, but I got married and had children, and we had issues there. But so I stopped that in order to protect my family. But that was the thing that we had as far as talent. Probably could have similar talent, although our talent we had by far the best talent, and everybody we played against, we had the best talent. In fact, we always talk about how practices were far more violent and difficult than the actual games were, and that was the truth. We're going up against people like the Wild Bunch, and with people like Jimmy Gunn and Charlie Weaver and Willie Hall and just Mark Morris, John Grant, and just great players. So many of them were so unwilling to talk about themselves. People like Bruce Dyer, Steve Fate. We just had incredible athletes who were not ever trying to shine the light on themselves. And I don't know what that was about. Because I always kind of felt like it's important to let people know who you are. And I really, that's a key item of who I eventually became, because I didn't want to ever have the light shining on me, because it creates a problem, right? It creates a problem for the people around you. It creates a problem for the individual, for me as well. So I think actually that's kind of what happened in my career, because like you said, I had gotten injured, really a bad injury. And really that was going into the last spring scrimmage of going into my junior season. And as far as everybody's concerned, as far as I was concerned, I had locked up the starting tailback position. In fact, there was a big article that came out and had me on there, and they were talking about Heisman possibilities. Am I going to be next? And I was ready. I was ready. My mind was in a frame of mind that I really felt like I was unstoppable, because I was demonstrating that in our scrimmages on campus, spring scrimmages. Whenever we'd have a scrimmage, I was going to score a touchdown almost whenever I felt like it. And that's how I really felt about myself, and that I had matured and gotten myself strong to a point that I was really unstoppable. And then I ran a play, and I ran outside, and I gained some yards, had a good gain, and a guy jumped on my back after I was out of bounds, and he was just playing around, just kind of rode me down to the ground, and I dislocated and broke my hip. I didn't have any idea what that's like. Well, okay, I just jammed it. I got up, and my mom was there, my dad, and my brother Fred, and they all just helped me over to the clinic. And I wound up having to go out to the hospital with the doctor saying, "We're going to get you for emergency surgery." I'm like, "What? Are you kidding?" And I had that surgery 60 stitches later and 6 weeks of rehab. I missed the whole season, the season that was going to be my breakout year. And wound up coming back, still had the starting job after missing a whole year. Playing with AD and Alan Carter, but I'm still the starting tailback. And nobody can touch me, meaning Coach McKay did not want anybody to touch me, because I was still, I was just coming back from that injury, although I was fully able to play. In fact, one of the guys on the team, Tom Bollinger, who was a defensive player, we were just running plays, right? No touching. And I came around and I put a move on him, and I wound up stumbling into him. And Coach McKay stopped practice, and he started screaming at that guy. I mean, it really crushed him. And whoa, man, that's interesting. And I really didn't understand it, but I guess he was just kind of overcompensating for the fact that I was allowed to be crushed on the field that they never practiced again on, by the way. They practiced in a new facility on campus. But after I got hurt there, they never had another practice there. But and then to go from that situation where I didn't get touched at all, and now we're going to go to Arkansas. And Arkansas, to me, was a similar environment to Alabama. Same colors. You got people out in the street, and they got the suey pig hats on them. Everybody in town had one. And they're all out in the street as we drive by. And then on game day, everybody's red and white. So it was very similar atmosphere to Alabama. Not much of racial overtones, but Arkansas at that point was, I think they were ranked number 6. And we were, I think, like 9 or 10.
They were 4. They were 4, Rod.
Okay, so they were 4. And so we were thinking, wow, this is going to be a battle. But I don't think we were ever lacking in confidence, even though at the end of the first half, the score was either tied or they were a little bit ahead. But I'm in the game. I'm starting at tailback, and I hadn't been touched in a year. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to be able to perform. But wound up having a pretty good game. Had over 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns, and it was just a wonderful experience. And to me, that was significant for me because I was able to come back and play and start again. So, very interesting. But there's another guy I remember seeing that night named Anthony Davis, who he had a spark. He definitely had a spark, like a little fire plug running all over the place. So he was I'm not sure I was worried about him, but I couldn't help but see him play and kind of enjoy what he was doing. Because I went off from there, and I think we won the first 3 games, and I was leading the country in rushing and I think scoring as well, as I had scored like 7 touchdowns in 3 games, and I wound up not ever actually scoring any more touchdowns after that point. So it was very interesting situation. But I look at that, though, to me that was a very important aspect of my development and my becoming a person who is not so much Rod-centered and a person who is God-centered. And that, to me, was significant because it allowed me to be able to have a family, have my 3 kids and grandchildren. That was all very important to me, and those are things that I was on the road to missing because my priorities were totally screwed up. Make sense?
You mentioned Anthony Davis. If you don't mind, Rod, even though you weren't centered on yourself, more of a team type of guy, well, I think your ability to run track made you a more north-south direct guy. I think your ability to play basketball allowed you to learn how to cut and maneuver on a court with a lot of pressure on your knee and your hips to be able to change direction. And then applying both of those made you a better football player. Is there any truth to that? And if so, how did you apply your game and learn to excel at being able to do the little things that a running back is required to do at that level? I mean, you're at the top of the heap there.
Yeah. Well, I think for one, my style, I was again trying to emulate Gale Sayers. I don't know if you ever watched Gale. Gale is like the less violent version of Walter Payton, right? He had the same moves like Barry Sanders, and he's just so smooth and flowed. So I always wanted to play like him. And to me, my running style was a combination of power, elusiveness, and speeds, because those are part of the things I wanted to demonstrate. So yeah, I agree with you. And Anthony, the thing I would say about him, and you can't take anything away from him. He's an incredible runner, incredible confidence, and that's one thing that OJ said in an interview I saw him talking about it. He said the most important thing is confidence, and when he said that, I said, he's absolutely right. You believe you can do something, most times you can. And that was something that I was lacking, really. There was a certain amount of confidence in my ability, in my body, that I didn't have when I came back. So I was able to play, and I go back sometimes and I see some of the stuff I did, even after I came back from the injury. I was like, whoa, that looked like you were confident. But I didn't always feel that way when I was.
Describe that to the folks that are listening, Rod, because if you're running a 28 toss sweep, right, or student body right, there's a confidence that you have. I'm going to receive the pitch. I'm going to be able to get it out to near the numbers and then break it up the field. Okay. Are you talking about no. I am going to hit it here versus there, because I know that by the time I get there, that hole is going to open up and I'm going to break through it. And when I do so, I will have nothing but me and the end zone to get there. The ability is one thing, but the know-how before it happens to realize that there is going to be a bigger success than what this play actually calls for. Is there a part of that was that true for you?
Well, I think what we're taught is not necessarily to have an expectation, but be able to react to whatever's the given aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And Coach McKay would call it run to daylight, right? That was his way of saying, this is how you got to be. You got to be able to go where the hole is. It's not always going to be a hole there, but all the running backs who play at SC have to have that vision. That's why he created that when we would stand up in the backfield. It's funny. All the guys running back, they stand straight up, like they're not even going to be in the play. Check that out if you haven't noticed it. But yeah, a lot of running backs now, they just stand straight up so they can go either way they want to go. But that's when Coach McKay put us into a 2-point stance so we can see the thing develop as we're going to the ball. The other thing he did is he had us use a basket, kind of a basket situation we would create by putting our hands underneath the ball. So the quarterback would put it right on our gut, and we would just take it from there, and we could fold it and put it wherever we need it. Where a lot of guys would say, you got to have that arm up, and then the ball goes there, you got to close down on it. But this is much more simple to use, I think. More, you can react better if the ball is here, and then you can change it and go any direction you want it to. But yeah, it's so awesome to be even considered in that group of people that you talk about, as far as the great running backs who played there with Mike and OJ and Marcus and Ricky Bell and Clay Davis and Sam. Even though Sam was mostly blocking, he was a heck of a runner, very good running. And Anthony Davis and just so many guys that never got their names mentioned. You have to have a combination of speed, determination, and then the ability to make a cut, make a guy miss. So I think as part of that, when you play running back, you're saying, okay, I like that combination of skills, and I want to develop that more. Obviously, if you can do that, then that makes you more viable as a person who might be able to play in the pros. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question. But yeah, that's a very important part of it.
When you get into that season, and you said you started against Arkansas, they were number 4 in the country. You've got some other really important games: Illinois, Michigan State. You've obviously got Notre Dame at one point. Stanford was ranked 15th in the country. Washington was number 18 at the time that you played them, and obviously UCLA was good enough to be nationally ranked, but not good enough to beat you guys. I mean, you had a really competitive schedule, and I know nowadays that's a real important part, that you have enough people on paper to qualify to win the national championship. You certainly did, and then you beat all of them, and then you end up with number 3, Ohio State, and you beat them convincingly. Is there any part of that season that you look back at and you go, I knew we were good when we fill in that blank for me? Well, when did you know that you had, because you were 6-4-1 for the 2 years prior to that, and then you go and you win those games at the end of the year after Dave Brown talks to Coach McKay, and then next thing you know, you don't lose again until the middle of 73. It's just an amazing run there, a tremendous amount of talent coming together, playing well at the right time. And every Saturday that you go out there, you guys were better than everybody else.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that comes from the attitude of the players you're around, right? I mean, nobody on our team felt like we could be beaten on a regular basis. And we had seen how even when we're not performing cohesively as a team needed to, we were still tough to beat. But then when we took the adversity out of it and became more comrades and people who cared for each other, we really started to it just started to click. And I really believe in that beginning of that season, there was none of us felt like we were going to get beat by anybody. And that was kind of the attitude from then on until I finished my career there. The only time I felt like we were going to get beat was in the Ohio State game in the Rose Bowl, that second one. Because Archie Griffin was having a great career, and I was I just didn't feel that same kind of intensity. I don't know if it was me or what, but the same intensity we had the previous year. And I have to say, we relied on some of the leadership, the leadership that we had that we missed out on. Charlie Young was gone. Sam was gone. A lot of the great players that we all relied on, John Grant, even Mike Ray was gone. So we had a whole different group, all very talented, all very capable. I think we lost one or two games that whole year. So yeah, we could have done it. We could have beaten Ohio State that day, but Archie did have a great game. He's a great running back. Well, I don't think we had those guys who just would stand up and say, "Hey, let's get it going, guys." Not afraid to call guys out when they're not delivering. Because we have some incredible players.
Rod, one question that I always ask any Trojan: what was it like for you knowing full well that Dr. Bartner and the USC marching band, and then Traveler coming out? You got the Song Girls. You've got those guys dressed in the 20s and 30s outfits as the cheerleaders. You've got a student section throwing cards all over the place. What made the SC experience there in the Coliseum unique and special for you?
Well, I gotta say, the thing that did it for me was the horse. I used to have a horse when I was, playing ball, and my brother and I both bought horses, and we loved horseback riding, and we loved horses, and that, have the white horse, Dave, that's just incredible. And that was just epitomized what we stood for, fight on, we're the Trojans, and we're here to win. We're here to beat you down no matter what you're trying to do. We're going to come back victorious. And then the cheerleaders, that goes without saying. They were just a special group. And, when you think about it, we had no interaction with them. There was no time that I can think of when we ever were able to even talk to those girls. They're almost like an entity in itself, encapsulated, that you could not get to. You know what I'm saying? They just did their thing and we did our thing, and but we were all part of the same. And I think there's a lot of discussion about that. A lot of the same. What do you call it? When there's
camaraderie.
That plus the what do you call it when it's like a regulation or a repetitive thing.
Well, I'm sure a lot of it came down from an assistant coach, and I wanted to ask about his name. Is Marv Goo, and he had to be a person who had a lot of influence on you as well as your teammates. He's not with us anymore, but he's an absolute legend. If you are a USC football fan, Marv Goo is a person who is incredibly important. And those were prime years in which Coach Goo was there. Why don't you talk a little bit about the great Marv Goo?
You know what? If there weren't things to say about him, then I wouldn't say him. But there are things to say about that guy. He was, like you said, he was like, I don't know what it would have been like without Marv, because he, even from the time when I was being recruited, I remember going on campus, and in those days, the football team's lockers were down underneath boulevards, the boulevard building, when we had dark lockers. And I remember being down there, getting ready for one of the games. All the recruits were down there, and we all had to line up on the side of the walls as the team was coming through. And boy, they would come through there. Marv had them all so fired up. Some guys would just go nuts on the lockers. It was amazing they even had lockers down there. Marv just had a way of, this picture here that you're showing that is not him. As Marv had what do you call that, spiky crew cut
Yes.
Marine Sergeant haircut. That's Marv Goo.
Yeah.
What that picture you that's the more calm Marv do. The guy was calming down. But Marv had his guys that he liked. A lot of them he was recruiting. That was like Sam and Charlie, and so he knew them better than me. I don't think Marv really understood me as well as he did those guys. But I got to tell you, he really blew me away. I remember, like I said, practice was a lot harder than the games. And when you're a rookie, a freshman, and you're not starting, you had to run the offense of the team we're going to play that week. And that was like not an easy thing to do because they knew where you were coming. They knew what you were going to do. And, some guys we were trying to survive that, learn some stuff, develop some skill. Excuse me. At the same time, though, we're trying to survive that whole experience. A lot of guys weren't making it through that. And I remember one time I was lining up and Marv just came over. He kicked me right in my butt. And I tell you, there was a moment there where I was either going to jump on him or walk off the field. And I had to say, okay, what are you going to do, Rod? You got to save face, or you going to let this guy kick you like that, or you just got to go kick his butt. I mean, I had to make that decision because I'm trying to run a play. And I decided my career at SC was more important than that. And I'm really glad go ahead.
Well, you bring up an incident or a question, and I want you to help me because I can't remember the guy's name, but I'm hoping you can. You had a teammate who dealt with Marv Gu, and this guy had been in special forces in Vietnam, and he was a tough guy. And he had an incident where he went up against, can you remember his name?
Of course I can. His name was Greg Slough.
Greg Slough. Greg Slough. Beret. He was a Green Beret in Vietnam who had gotten out of the military and he'd come to the Trojans. And I'm told he was the one guy that Marv Gu did not screw with. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I absolutely can. In fact, I know one of the guys that was on the freshman squad with me also had a run-in with him. And he went up against Marv and came back with a cracked helmet. So, yeah. But Marv was and Greg had just had a reputation because he not only was a Green Beret, he looked like he was a Green Beret. He was one of the nicest guys on the field. Yeah. But you knew that if he got pushed too far, it could be over for all of us. He's a great guy, though.
Yeah.
Love Greg. He's a good man.
Let
me finish this story, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got to tell you this. So, Marv and I stayed away from him. Didn't really care that much about him because, he kicked me in my butt. Come on. I can't live that down. And when I got hurt, and I try to, I believe Marv would never lie to you. That's one thing I believe. He would never lie to you. And he came to see me when I was in the hospital recovering. And I was really shocked. I was surprised. And he told me, he said, "You're having the best spring of any running back we have ever had here." And that was OJ. That was Mike Garrett, Willie Brown, a lot of running backs that Marv had seen. And he told me that. It's like, wow. And the fact that he came to see me in the hospital, it just really showed me a side of Marv that people don't know. That he is was a caring, loving, sensitive person. And that's the part about Marv that he hid very well, but every now and then you could see that. And that's what I love about him. And I love the guy. He was such a part of the whole SC mentality. Take no prisoner mentality. Yeah.
Rod, if you don't mind me asking, I'd like to follow up with that because you got Coach McKay, who is kind of distant, I would say, in some respects. He was there and he put his arm around you if you did well, if the cameras were on, and maybe even during practices. But it's okay to have another guy that represents the school, the coaching staff, the program, and everything that's a part of it that is a little more interactive. And you said something that was really critical in my life. I knew that if there was a coach that loved me or cared for me, I would do anything for. Or I'd even let him kick me in the butt because I knew he wanted me to be better. Versus a guy that I didn't know that cared about me at all, I wouldn't allow them to do anything like that. Do you understand the difference that I'm making there? And can you please comment on that and Marv's? And maybe there were other coaches that were significant parts of your life, your degree, your education, wanting you to be successful after your career is over, as well as while you're wearing your pads and lacing up your cleats every day.
I have to say that they had some exceptional people. I can name lots of names, like Dave Levy, Craig Furtick, Willie Brown, Coach Fonts, Wayne Fonts, just incredible guys. And all those guys loved us. They all loved our team. And, nobody was ever going to put us down and not correct the situation, right? We all knew what Marv was about. Marv was the intensity guy. But all of the other coaches, all the coaches wanted to, more than anything, they wanted to be successful. And they wanted us to succeed. And so, they were always about, hey, what are you doing? You gotta get your stuff done. You gotta be able to be eligible to play. You gotta get your studies done. Don't fool around. Don't be going out here doing crazy stuff. And they really put some restrictions on us a lot of times, And it's just, I think I was more and more convinced as I got to know more of the coaches on the field and off the field that SC was the right place because of that.
Well, let me throw in a little bit of an X's and O's observation. Harper, John McKay created in 1960-61 the I formation, and it was a brand new concept that had never been seen in football, pro or college. And everyone said, this is crazy because he's lining up a running back like 7 yards behind the center. It's like he's got to go 7 yards before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. But Rod had brought up an observation earlier that the whole idea was, you might have a play called and you're just going to go to this particular it's going to go in this particular direction, but you never know. The linebacker might fill it up. And what this idea was with the I formation was it gave the running back enough time to look and observe and cut and change direction. OJ did that. You did that, Rod. Talk about the I formation and the ability to get the ball farther behind the line of scrimmage than most formations, and then sort of run to daylight based upon what the blocking and the tackling was doing for you.
Right. In fact, if you go get a chance to look at any old films, I was probably a step or two back deeper than most of the other guys who played that spot. And I always thought it was important to have a little room between me and the fullback. So I gave myself a little more room. And, I remember somebody saying, Coach, is it okay for him to be that deep? And he said, yeah, that's the way he feels comfortable. And I did feel comfortable that way. And it truly allowed you to see as a play is developing, right? You come out and you're going to start in a particular direction, right? if it's a counter or if it's a a play that's gonna be a pitch. Because we had a play that was like a pitch, but then you would cut it off and go off tackle. So yeah, that like you have your diagram here, you can see everything happening from the eye. You can see if you want to do a cutback, but the whole thing is not to have a predetermined spot to go to unless trap play or something like coach call a 22 blast, which is right over the guard, or a 23 blast, which will be over the left guard. So yeah, everything was simple, but very effective. Very effective. You can see it was well thought out, and it was reflected the genius that Coach McKay had. Because I mean, who thinks you can make plays like that and have a reason behind it besides somebody who's a genius? You know, high school, everybody's doing the double wing or the pro set. Everybody's doing something different. And here he is. He's coming out with a whole different kind of a situation, which is still functioning today, right? A lot of people still running that formation, losing the fullback sometimes, but you can insert him rather easily in the formation without losing anything. So, yeah, I have to say he was a genius. He understood the offensive side of the game, and he knew who to give the defense stuff to. He didn't mess around with that much. But the guys who he had playing, doing the defense, they were all excellent. That's people like Dave Levy and some of the other guys. I can't remember their names, but just excellent coaches. Excellent.
Oh, Gibbs, I believe, was one of his assistant coaches.
Gibbs, yeah. And that's one of the things you really learn a lot about how good they were when you go to the pros. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, that was a real eye opener. Yeah.
Modernized.
A lot of guys would
football.
Yeah. One of the strategies that I find in that formation, Rod, if you don't mind me jumping in there, one of the strategies of that, and you mentioned this a little bit when Steven brought it up, it gives you time, about 2, maybe 2.5 seconds before you hit a specific point where maybe the wide receiver is, and you have the ability to read where a linebacker who's trying to get out there may have over pursued, and you can cut back and beat him, or he under pursued and there's a blocker in the way, and you can take it to the sideline a little bit more, and then not only just get back to the line of scrimmage, but really take advantage and get all that momentum. You're hard to tackle when you're going full speed and you're out on the sideline where somebody's had to take an angle. There's a strategy to that. Excuse me. And especially when the linemen learn how to block it well and just keep pushing people out of the way and making sure that they don't make a tackle. It proved to be such a success. And obviously the student body left and right, which made USC famous. And you were a part of that. Is that something that was part of your development in learning how to not over pursue and learn the patience that was best for you, that might be a little bit different than Anthony or what OJ did? And find that you're going full speed at the right spot when you're carrying the ball past the line of scrimmage and down the field.
Yeah, it actually is, because one of the things about the blocking schematics, a lot of times they'll want a tackle to go block this guy and take him in that direction, right? Or a guard will block the guy and take him to another place, making a hole. Well, Coach McKay basically would say, your job is to completely involve yourself with this guy is over you. In other words, he can't be looking for me as a runner because he's trying to deal with the guy who's trying to block him. So, a lot of times you'll see a blocker will, a lineman will go, come back, take a step back and go off to the other side, trapping a guy or trying to block a guy who's next to him. But Coach McKay's idea was just get involved with the guy in front of you, whoever that is, and let the back find the best way to go, which to me, again, that's the genius. And as you know, we had some excellent offensive linemen who went on to play a lot of years and NFL. People like Steve Riley and a lot of I can't remember their names now, but Alan Graff, of course, he was a great player. John Vella, these guys they just did the job. And if you go back and look at the plays, they were about just making contact and doing the job with whoever was in front of them. I think that was, again, genius on Coach McKay's side.
Yeah, and it's pretty nice to have a Vela or Buddy or some of the other Gorsuch, some of the guys that I've known that were part of that. That's a confidence booster too, isn't it? Knowing that you've got some guys up front that are going to be playing on Sundays for a long time.
Exactly. So what position did you play?
I was tight end, and then in the pros, I was a long snapper. I was one of the goofy dudes that just punts, field goals, and extra points.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, in fact, that's the thing I think that SC is so good about, and why so many of the players did well in the NFL, because the game suits the better physically capable person. You know what I mean? If your running back has the ability to make a cut and make a read at the same time as he's going full speed, or your lineman has the ability to get a person under control and then move him in the direction he wants him to go, knowing that his back is going to read off of whatever he's doing, it just makes him a better player.
Yeah.
Somebody, you're more valuable. I think that's what we see a lot. Our guys generally get in the NFL and do well. Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking with Dave Levy and Marv Goo and all that, there's times in practices where they're teaching you certain techniques and fundamentals that will go by in a split second during a game, but you talk about it, you go through it, you walk through it. Then you go in team where there's no pads. And then you learn the process of how to do it at full speed because you've taken the time to do it at no speed at all. Drawing it up on the board is one thing. Now, every team does this, but the way that SC did it, obviously the results and the dividends of those results were obviously national championships for you and Rose Bowls for you and all of these great games that SC was ending up doing. So that staff itself, credit to them for being able to dumb it down, but also get it to the point where you can master that skill set and use it on Saturdays. And next thing you know, the fight song's being played over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think I'd call that skill fragmentation offense.
Okay.
Because you're breaking down to fragments, right? The steps you take from the quarterback, how what you're looking at when you take the ball. You're focusing on where you're going. You're not focused on the quarterback. That's his thing to get the ball there too. So you're just confidently taking the steps. If there's one step to the left and then up, if you're taking 3 steps and then turning like around the corner, or if you're blowing out of there at top speed, we go through those individually with just the running back and a quarterback, right? Then you work in a tight end, you work in the lineman, and all that's all put together individually, and then you have the final product, and that's what you see on Saturday, and that's what it just always worked out that way. It's like, okay, especially if you put some of your own effort into watching to see how a given linebacker is going to play a certain play. You can kind of get a feel for where they're going to be based on how they reacted in the film you've watched. And that's also a big part of our training and preparation.
I think, Rod, what you're getting at is that Coach McKay was a guy who really modernized football as much as Bear Bryant or Vince Lombardi. He created, the other thing is he wanted smart players, because what you're talking about requires intelligent players who know the playbook and are going to be it was a pretty basic offense, but it had a lot of moving parts. And like you said, you had to be able to react back there from 7 yards back.
Yeah.
But I want to change the subject because there's an interesting story. And so we're moving on a little bit, but there's a story that I want to tell you, and I don't know if you know it. And it involves your son, Gray. And I want to get to 2008, because in 2008, I interviewed Rod for my book, What It Means to Be a Trojan. And Rod was working at AT&T in Orange County. And the interview took place, I believe it was at an El Torito's coffee shop in Tustin, I think is where we were. So we were in there, we're having a nice conversation. We're talking about, your career, just as we have today. And I think after the interview, we started talking about our families, and you were talking about you were working at AT&T. And my daughter, her name is Elizabeth, and she was looking for work. And I said, hey, Rod, you think maybe there might be a position lower down the trough, for someone like my daughter? And you said, well, my son Gray is really the one she needs to talk to. So I gave you Elizabeth's phone number and assumed that either Gray would call Elizabeth or the other way around. Well, that night, I was living in Los Alamitos, and I don't know if you know this story. This is kind of funny. Elizabeth comes by, door opens, she walks in, and right behind her is your son, Gray McNeill. And she goes, yeah, this is Gray McNeill. I go, oh, well, I guess somebody made that phone call for the job at AT&T. So I'll tell you where I'm going with this. Eventually, I guess it became a date. So I go, well, it sounds like you guys need a chaperone. So that was me. We went down to Seal Beach, and I think we went to Hennessy's, and Elizabeth immediately goes over and starts playing pool. And Gray and I sit down, and I buy him a beer, and we're watching the Dodger game. And, Gray had pitched, if I've got my facts right, I believe he pitched at San Diego State, and he played in the minors, I think, for the Padres. And so he definitely was a baseball guy. He's a big man, too. I mean, I'm sure he played football. He really looked more like a football player, but baseball was his sport, as was mine. Well, anyway, the bottom line is, that night, we're watching the Dodger game, and it's Clayton Kershaw's very first game ever as a Dodger. And Gray and I are watching this guy, and we're both pitchers, and we're like, holy cow, this guy is going to be the greatest pitcher the Dodgers have ever had. And he certainly turned out to be. I don't think that was the greatest date in the world for Elizabeth, who more or less was playing pool while her old man and her date were talking about Clayton Kershaw and baseball all night. But I don't know if you knew that story, but I thought I would run that by you because it's kind of a funny one. Today, Elizabeth runs a bed and breakfast in New England with her husband. And so you might want to.
I can't wait. Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Gray was a player of the year at pitching at high school. They won the CIF championship when Gray was playing there. So, yeah, he was very good. I think I probably should have let him play football, but if I had to do over again, I would have just forced him to play baseball because he had the skill. But it takes a special commitment to get to that level. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Sure.
Thanks. You just got to else out. Really.
Well, I wanted to tell that story because I didn't know if you knew it or not, and I'm sure you can replay this.
Well, tell her I said.
Yes. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I'm going to tell Gray tonight.
Okay. Well, after USC, you went into the pros. Tell us about your pro career, the teams you played for, and the coaches you played for.
Yeah. Well, it's a looking back on it, it was a tough thing for me because just coming out of SC it's tough to match up with the facilities, the city, the coaching. It was just really, especially going to a team that is, sometimes I felt like we weren't really even trying to win the football games. And I even probably made a mistake of saying that to some of the people that were on the team. So it's come to find out thereafter, after my career was over, I found out in a expose that Time magazine did that, they did an expose on the mafia and gambling, sports betting.
Wow.
And, one of their sources said, we had a football coach and a quarterback on the team when I was playing there. So it confirmed everything that I thought I was seeing. And, I probably shouldn't have said anything about that because that probably had something to do with how my career went with the Saints and with Tampa. Because, I would go to when Coach McKay would say on the daily show or the weekend show, he'd say, hey, they'd say, this is Rod McNeill. He's a good running back. He's got to see more of him. And Coach McKay would say, yeah, he's going to start next week. So I go through the week looking forward to starting and then don't play. So I'm not sure what that was all about. But, yeah. But playing in the NFL, of course, is every kid's dream. Is just, I don't know if it was my attitude at that point, but it just didn't pan out like I hoped it would. It really didn't.
Your first year, 74, you were a rookie with the New Orleans Saints. John North was the coach. You were 5-9. Not good, but at least, there were some things that obviously from your rookie year you can learn from. I took some notes here. If you don't mind, you come back to the Coliseum early in the year and you lose 24-0. What was that like for you coming back to USC, or at least coming back to LA? And this is the field that you had owned for 4 or 5 years. You had been a part of that, and now it's the pro game and you're playing with the Rams, and it's the day after probably you had played a home game, or maybe UCLA was there. And the homecoming itself may not have been a big deal, but I'm a professional now. I'm a paid individual that is a member of an NFL team. Did you have to get a bunch of tickets for family members? And if so, did that come out of your game check? I'm kind of teasing with you there. But obviously a chance to come back and go, I made it. I'm at the highest level I could possibly be.
Well, yeah, I certainly had to get a lot of tickets, and I remember paying. So, yeah, that was extremely exciting. There's no question about it. My brother Fred was a first-round choice, so that was even fun. It was fun playing against him and his Viking teammates. I guess it was just difficult to put all the changes together. The city, the facility. It's me coming from, with the best program in college football. It was a little difficult, and playing in the best city. But it was an honor. There's no question about it. It was truly an honor. And I appreciated the people of New Orleans, Louisiana, and the people of the state. They were all great fans, really, really excellent fans. But it was just so hard. It was so hard to impact winning or losing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're in college, you have a kind of feel for what you're going to get. How much playing time you're going to get. I mean, even when AG started to do well, I always had a feeling that I would get to play a certain amount. But I couldn't call it when I was in the NFL. I really couldn't call it.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough, very tough.
Well, Rod, I mentioned that first year you were 5-9. The second year, your coach John North gets let go during the season. Ernie Hefferly was the replacement. You're 2-12, and then the following year in '76, you join McKay in Tampa, and you're 0-14. So you've lost all but 2 games in 2 seasons. And I wrote this down. Please forgive me. You had 0 points until week 3 on that Tampa team. You were shut out, not you specifically, but the team was shut out 5 times in a 14-game schedule. There were 7 games that you played where the team scored less than 10 points, and you had only 7 games where you scored more. Which is and so I'm hearing this from you, and please forgive me. I'm not your psychologist or an analyst or anything, but you would hear your countenance lowers. Mine would, anybody's would. I went 0-12 my freshman year at Colorado State University, and I don't want to talk about it.
I think he froze up. But I think Harper's getting to, I mean, the bottom line is, Rod, you're with, I mean, this is one of these rare places, USC, where you might even be a little better than some pro teams. The atmosphere certainly was. So I think that's what Harper's getting at, is all of it. You go from this win conquest situation, dominance, to, the lower rung of the National Football League.
Yeah, I really think, unfortunately, I think Coach McKay bought some of that on himself at Tampa, because we had a lot of talent there, but teams were determined not to let us win. I mean, they were pulling out the stops to keep Coach McKay from winning a game. And I really believe that the NFL owners and their staff had a thing of vendetta, if you will, against McKay, because he was saying stuff, like, oh yeah, we'll make the playoffs first year. We should be in the Super Bowl here in a couple of years. I mean, unfortunately, I think some of the people took difference to some of the things he was saying about his capability and how he was going to coach the team. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That just seemed to me to be something that I was seeing a lot of. And like, for example, when the team has made the playoffs and you really don't want to play your starters. Well, we would get to a point where we score some points, and next thing you know, their starters are in the game. Like, okay, what's going on here, guys? Those guys shouldn't even be playing, but you can see that happening.
And there certainly were an awful lot. It does make sense, but there were an awful lot of USC Trojans who played on those teams, yourself included, Richard Batman Wood, J.K. McKay, Ricky Bell. I'm sure I'm missing a few. It had to be tough to go and Coach McKay himself to go from that environment to all of a sudden, why aren't we getting it done here? And it wasn't I don't think it was that McKay could not coach in the pros. He was a modern coach. He was an innovator. I think he had the mind for it. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you think he was just a great college coach?
No, he clearly had the ability to win on that level, because I mean, he demonstrated that. A couple of years later, right? They made it to the playoffs. And I'd say in record. But I just think it's just a different sport, it's a whole different thing going on in the NFL. And, because you look at me on the AD down there at one point, it was me, AD, Ricky, all of us on the same team. So, I left shortly thereafter, but at one point, I think people were like fed up with the whole SC connection. And it's kind of interesting to me too, that I think there's still a lot of that feeling across the country about USC. I think a lot of people don't like the fact that we have a great record of success, great record of great players, great record of a great city, and then they have to see us win all the games. It's like, I really think people don't like SC. I really don't believe they do, and they'll do whatever they can, within reason, to prevent us from being successful out here. I think that's what we're seeing. What Coach Lincoln Riley's up against a lot. And I was kind of blown away by some of the stuff I saw in the Big Ten, how they, in the Wisconsin game, I think it was. You're not supposed to change a play unless there's irrefutable evidence in the film. We had the game we were playing. They stopped the game for, I don't know how long it was, a long time. They didn't get the irrefutable evidence, but they still changed the play. How does that happen? I don't know. I don't get it. I lose you guys again?
No, there's a little bit of a delay, so sorry about that. Yeah, well, the success that USC has had, Ohio State, Alabama, obviously there are folks around the rest of the country that are going, I'm sick and tired of those guys winning all the time. I want anyone to beat them, anyone. So I appreciate your concern there with that. But that's just part of the success. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life now, Rod. What are you doing, and how are you staying busy? And are there plenty of opportunities for you to be invited back? And do you get a chance to visit with some of the other teammates that you had? I know everybody's getting a little bit older and longer in tooth, but what are the times like for you when you get a chance to go back and celebrate that 92 national championship team?
Oh, it was wonderful. And we had an event not too long ago, a couple of years ago, where they invited us all back, and they gave us all a beautiful medallion for the national championship team, and we got treated to dinner at a restaurant we take our wives to. It was really beautiful, and the coaches and the staff gave us just really first-class treatment, and it was really fantastic. And I appreciate all that Coach Riley did for us, and it really showed that they appreciated what we're doing. And in fact, since then, they've also made it easy for us to. We have a way of calling someone if we want to get to a game and get some tickets. So that was something that kind of dropped away for a while. For a minute there, it looked like they didn't care about what we had done and who we were. But this team now, this program, is making it clear that they respect our former players and really respect what we've accomplished, and how we're able to impact the success of future teams. Yeah.
With NIL money the way that it is and all that kind of stuff, can you imagine what the riches, what the gold, what the glory would be like from 1972 and that national championship run? I know Anthony had a nice big Cadillac on campus. You might have had a nice Lamborghini and diamonds around your neck and everything like that. A completely different era, isn't it?
Well, I had a TR6. I don't know if you remember that car, but that was my baby. That was the first car I bought. But
what color? What
Triumph, color? A great car. But I mean, it was a burgundy with black interior, black top.
Very nice.
Soft top. Beautiful car. But I think it's so incongruous to me how they can expect the sport to continue while they're doing this. And it's gotta get fixed. And I think, unfortunately, the guys they're gonna have to fix it against, gonna probably rail against it, because they're gonna have to be shut down from all this money that's being floated around out there. It's just not. I don't think it's continuable. It's just not, in my opinion. If you want to have college football, you can't keep going like that.
I've said on several occasions, it seems like bang, the official says, go, you can run the race. So you start running around the track. And as you go around one lap after another, hey, how far are we going? I don't know yet. Just keep running. I'll tell you when so you don't know how to pace yourself. The rules, the regulations, the governance of it seems to be such a problem, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Is there a way that if you were the commissioner or the president of the NCAA, that you would be able, if you were there for one day, what would you do, or what would you suggest be done in order to help get college football back where it needs to be?
Well, I mean, clearly, the money's going to be a big thing. I think, it's patently unfair to me to, grossly overpay a wide receiver or a running back or a quarterback even, and then the linemen aren't getting anything. So, I mean, if they're going to continue paying, they're going to have to be some kind of equitable way of sharing those revenues to all the players, all the student athletes. And I don't know if that'll work, but it should be. There should be a way to demonstrate that, and demonstrate some loyalty to the team and to the school, and still have a good reward for being a great player. There'd be some equity that I can build into that, but it's got to be across the board, something, and then maybe you can reward people on additional accomplishment, But what did I say? The Dallas, no, the Texas quarterback, Arch Manning, $4 million, I think.
Yeah,
I can't even believe. I'm not even. I can't compute.
Yeah, that's
Right.
it's a number that almost makes going pro not an option if you're a second or a third. I'm sorry, probably about a fifth rounder. You wouldn't be able to make that for years, depending on where you're drafted. And he's well, God bless him. All right, that's the way the market is right now. It was different back then when you played. It was different when I played. So it is what it is, and there's not much can be done about it. I appreciate your comments on that. Steven, before we go, give me final comments here, and we want to thank Rod McNeill for being a guest on the show, and obviously we want to be respectful of his time, but great memories here of talking about his history as a USC Trojan, as a professional athlete, and obviously even in his early life in North Carolina.
Well, this is the third interview that I've conducted with Rod. Two were for books, now for this podcast / YouTube show. And I enjoyed talking about how I basically ruined the date for Gray and Elizabeth, but that was a funny night. We still talk about that in the Travers household. But Rod, I tell you, the thing about, you were talking about college and they're getting paid, but the one thing that really sticks out is if you're a Trojan, you're a Trojan for life. And we both went to USC, and that just is a connection that we had right from the very beginning when I first interviewed you. Yeah. It's still there today, and it's still there for everybody who went to the University of Southern California, whether you were an athlete or you were just a student. Everyone sat in a class with some guy who was a football star. That's the thing about college sports is you're all in it together. You're not the athletes weren't just in some roped off VIP room while the fans waited outside in the cold. you shared it together, and we shared it together. I wasn't there at the same time, but it's been an honor knowing you, calling you a friend, having you give us of your time to be on this show. I'm going to send you the link, and feel free to send it to your family and your Trojan friends. I'm sure they will all enjoy hearing your reminiscences.
I will most definitely do that. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to say I'm especially proud of what's happening with my former teammates and the Bible study we have weekly. And, we have a great list of things that we pray about, and we're seeing God do some wonderful things in the lives of people that are, just touched by that Bible study. It's 40, 50 years ago, but it's still going strong, and we can go out and probably win some games today with that attitude. So, but thank you guys both very much. I really enjoy speaking to both of you.
Well, it's been our pleasure as well. And Rod, thank you for that. Obviously putting pad to paper, and the legacy of any champion is to what can I do to help make an opportunity for somebody else to be a champion as well. And so especially from the last few comments that you made, your desire for that to happen at a spiritual level is certainly to be commended. Thank you for all the prayers that you have for all the people that you pray for. It's an awesome part of your legacy as well. You played 3 years in the National Football League, 1 with Tampa, 2 with the New Orleans Saints. And for obvious reasons, there are guys that never get that chance and opportunity. So that's a special situation. You got to play at USC, a place that many people would love to get the opportunity, even though they say they hate the school. If a scholarship were offered to you to go to the University of Southern California, how many would turn that down? Not many at all. So you got a chance to do that, and you won a national championship while you were there. So certainly a tremendous life that you led through your athletics, through your ability, and obviously with your parents bringing you up from as early as your North Carolina days when you're a kid and you're playing on the basketball court to be successful, to be excellent, to be smart, and to be a leader and an example to others. That is certainly a trait and a quality that once it is learned is passed down. So thank you for that as well. So I'm Harper LeBel. I'd like to say thank you to Steven Travers. Steven did a great job in inviting his guest, Rod McNeill, here. We will have other guests, obviously, of similar interest and hopefully of great value to you, our listeners. So for Steven Travers and for Rod McNeill, this is Harper LeBel saying thank you to Logan Landers, our producer and engineer. We hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your